was going to be at the fire station Saturday.
Oh, okay.
So I got 3 kids coming down. Crap.
Sorry.
I'm like, all right, Krista, next year we got it.
Okay.
Patrick's not here?
We can start without him.
Yeah, where's Twa?
He's not coming.
Oh, he's not? J. Patrick Twa? I don't do that.
He's like my husband.
I gotta
Chicken.
write like
know how to-
I gotta sign like the doctor would.
You'll enjoy it.
I know how to do math.
Professional.
Oh, Google Maps?
Yeah,
So you
well, I
can
got
find yourself?
Scout,
You can kind of make out my first name.
but anyway, I got that down. And I actually read an email somebody sent me.
There you go.
Yeah. Actually, I read emails now. Something's on the iPad, it just, there it is. No, actually, I can read my smartphone without my spectacles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he's here.
We'll let him take a seat.
No, Mr. Twat tonight?
No, he called in and he's not able to make it, so I got that information about 4 this afternoon, so
You can scooch over if you want.
Past this place 10 times.
change names. I'd like to call Ferrisburg City Council work session to order tonight, Monday, December 17, 2018, at 6:30 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hop,
Here.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Here.
Councilmember DeWitt.
Here.
Councilmember Twa. Councilmember O'Donnell.
Here.
Councilmember Carlson.
Here.
Councilmember Blees.
Donna,
Yes.
I'd make motion to excuse Councilman Twa.
Support?
Motion support. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passed. The first work session presentation will be given by Mr. Pat McGinnis from the Affordable Housing.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to pass out a little handout, if I may. And Rhonda, I always used your maiden name, Rhonda Klein is with us tonight as well. She is the Neighborhood Housing Services Director, and she'll be covering part 2, and I will cover part 1. And I want to start out by thanking you for adjusting your schedule a little bit so I can be here. I don't get here as often as I would like because I could learn a lot on how to conduct myself at public meetings if I came here more often and observed Craig. But I talked to Craig a little while back, and we wanted to do this, go to all of the local governments. One of the goals of this plan is to share this and get out and talk about it with our neighbors. And Craig and I agreed, it's like, well, our meetings are first and third Mondays, so good luck with that, being in 2 places at once. Well, this worked out, so we'll start at 7 o'clock tonight, and you guys are willing to start at 6:30. In 2017, the Grand Haven City Council discussed during the annual goal-setting event that we get together each year in November, and we spend a couple, 3-4 hours just kind of blue skying things. City council members just individually take turns talking about things they would like to see the city work on or stop working on, or areas we ought to get interested in. So in 2017, a big point of discussion, and certainly something that's always in the media. Roger was just telling me that he was listening to the radio today and hearing nationwide homelessness numbers are up again. So you know, it's a problem all across the country, and certainly in Ottawa County we've got an issue. We've been hearing a lot about it from the county level, and Housing Next is a significant undertaking at the county level. I don't know if Ryan Kilpatrick's been here yet, but you're on his list. He's working for Housing Next to get out and try to make a difference in the area of affordable housing. The concept is that the cost of living is going up faster than people's ability to earn. You know, people are doing a little better each year, which is what we hope for in America, that you're always getting a little bit better off, but the cost of living is outpacing that significantly, so the problem is not getting better. The cost of housing is outstripping many people's ability to pay for that housing. So anyhow, getting to the PowerPoint presentation, we set up a task force, just a group of people to get together and start talking about the issue, because it seems like every forum I've been to and every discussion I've had, everybody's got just a universe of ideas and comments and thoughts about what's happening, why it's happening, and whether or not local government can even hope to ever make any kind of a difference in it. So let's get a group of people together. We had 2 city council members, Jerry and Denny, 2 planning commissioners, Steve Skodak and Mike Dora, Tom Reinsma, who serves on the 4 Points board, also has a lot of history with the Salvation Army. So just has a good body of knowledge about housing issues in the Tri-Cities. Ryan Kilpatrick, who I mentioned, is with Housing Next at the county level. He was hired away from MEDC to be the executive director of this. It's funded by the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation and the Holland Community Foundation for a 5-year period. They put up enough money to run this thing for 5 years and see if they can make a difference. Rhonda Klein, who is our neighborhood housing services manager, and myself. Oh, I skipped over Jennifer. Jennifer Holland's our community development manager, our planner. And as I said, that the idea here is, can local government make a difference? And if not, if we can't actually incentivize anything or create anything or do anything, can we at least make sure we're not part of the problem? Can we start with that? Are we causing affordable housing to be an issue? And if so, how can we get out of the way, let the private market do what they need to do to try to solve this problem on their own? And one easy thing to point at is your zoning ordinance, and maybe we've got some restrictions about number of square feet or exterior building treatments and that sort of thing that generally causes the price of housing to go up. So let's take a close look at our zoning ordinance and make sure that that's not contributing to the problem. Housing rates in Ottawa County rising faster than people's ability to pay. As we looked at this and had a very diverse group of people, that group, some very conservative individuals, some more progressive folks. We're in a rather conservative part of the state here in West Michigan. So the idea of out and out social programming, affordable housing programming is not something that tends to get to the top of people's lists right away. So we thought, well, what things can we all agree on? What things can we all lock arms and try to proceed with? First off, was everybody who works in Grand Haven should be able to live in Grand Haven. We would like to see a future town that has that available, that if you work there, you can afford to live somewhere there. We think there's a significant workforce. We all want people to work in our tourist industry and all of our factories. They need somewhere to live. So it would be an ideal situation if everybody who works around here could also live around here. Second, we should have a variety of housing options. And again, you can take Grand Haven and put in Tri-Cities or Northern Ottawa County or whatever you like. Actually, I like to think that we did a lot of work on this. We probably spent about 6 months having meetings a couple hours a month and then a lot of staff time in between. And it came out pretty good. Rhonda will get to those bullet points, the 10 steps. So if you just wanted to take out Grand Haven and stick in Ferrysburg, there's no copyright infringement or anything. You can go ahead and do that. The last one is those who live in Grand Haven now should be able to remain in Grand Haven as they age. So we don't want a housing market that pushes out people when they get to be on a fixed income and those housing costs keep going out and leave them with no option but to have to move somewhere else. We'd like to think that we can all stay here. So everybody agreed on those 3 things when we first started out. Those are 3 things that we all felt that committee that I showed you, that task force that I showed you, were things we could all agree on. So we kind of built the recommendations on those 3 ideals, and each meeting we'd remind ourselves, or as we went through these things, we kept framing it in terms of these 3 ideals that we had put together. And by the way, it was a 5-0 vote at City Council to adopt this plan. So they did adopt it formally this past August. So everything that's in here, they've essentially told me 5-0, you go ahead and work on those things and see if you can make some of those things happen. Now it's audacious. I wish I could say we're going to knock all 10 of these steps out of the ballpark, but we'll do the best we can. And now I'm going to give it to Rhonda Klein to finish things off and bring us home.
Good evening. Thanks. As Pat said, thanks for having us. We always appreciate being able to come and talk about what we're doing. And again, as Pat mentioned, after about 6 months of work that the task force went through, we came up with a list of recommendations, and those were presented to the City Council, and then the City Council adopted them. So I'm just going to briefly go through what the recommendations were. or are, I should say. The first one is using financial incentives and tools that can be accessed for any sort of development. So if there's someone, you know, everyone knows that part of the reason that housing is so expensive is because it's expensive to develop. The labor is expensive, the material is expensive, the land is expensive, but there are different tools and resources that developers can use. And if we have a good working knowledge of them for our region, then we can talk to developers and make sure that they understand what they are, what's available, how to access it, how to use it, and all of that kind of stuff. There's things like the brownfield redevelopment, low-income housing tax credits, payments in lieu of taxes, all different kinds of options. And that's one of the things that Ryan Kilpatrick is really an expert on. He understands all the ins and outs of the different programs, and he's working right now with a developer in the city. So he's been a good asset in that area. The second recommendation is identifying viable sites for high density or mixed use. So just basically anything, you know, driving around town, talking to people who live there, talking to people who have property that they're thinking of selling, but as a region or as, you know, as the city, just being aware of what is out there, and then if people start talking about it and start asking questions, we, you know, have a knowledge of that. And third is to support higher density development in select districts. One of the things, again, Pat touched on, is that a lot of times we make zoning ordinances that really go against affordable things. So if you, you know, do mixed use developments, or even just supporting in an area where right now it can only be single family homes, maybe you go ahead and change that so they can be duplexes or triplexes. There's a lot of clicks between slides here. And 4 and 5 kind of go together. 4 is establishing a public acquisition fund, possibly at the, you know, working with the Grand Haven Community Foundation for that. And then 5 is also the possibility of establishing a private acquisition fund and using those funds together to do different types of projects. And number 6 is what we're doing here tonight, is a regional approach. What we would like to see is, you know, some sort of a collaboration with the Tri-Cities, Northern Ottawa County. You know, maybe we develop a housing commission, and the board of the housing commission can make some decisions about what we want to see in the area. And, you know, these recommendations aren't only speaking to, you know, developing and putting in, you know, new, you know, multi-unit, great big complexes that are 8 stories high or anything like that. You know, we're talking about anything from, you know, maybe changing your zoning ordinance to allow accessory dwelling units, or making it so that you can have the size of your structure doesn't have to be quite as big. That supports higher density because you can have more units in an area. Again, you know, maybe changing an area from single family to 2-family housing, all different types of projects, supporting public and private funds to be used for repair programs, or that's my favorite example, so that's the one that sticks out to me. And then to move on from there, number 7 is speaking about public transportation, and is our transportation, is there anything that we can do to change that so that we can link the areas together? Can we link Muskegon County better to this area for workers who are coming from Muskegon, or to link it, you know, going south to jobs that are in Zeeland and in Holland? And 8 is zoning ordinance rewrites. That's something that right now the city is working on, accepting bids for proposals for an ordinance. And like we've already touched on, you know, looking at the ordinance and see if there's anything in it that hinders, you know, affordable housing, and possibly making any kind of changes there. 9 is providing quarterly project report or progress reports to the Grand Haven City Council and to anyone who becomes an active partner. And then the 10th one is an annual progress report. Questions? I just kind of whipped through those really fast, so I didn't take up too much time, but any questions?
This information is so relevant, both with the aging population that we have in the area to stay or to age in place, but then also for the younger families and the school-age children. There are so many kids in Ottawa County that don't have a home, don't have a place to call their own bedroom and that, so there's definitely this need. I serve with Ottawa County Action Agency, and you see the need there, and it's countywide, nationwide too, but to create a collaboration, I think all of us need to be well aware of this and be willing partners of some sort. So, thank you. Anybody else?
Yep. You suggested setting up a commission to make recommendations. The commission would make recommendations to Ferrisburg to change our zoning ordinances, but they won't have the power to override our ordinances. They would come to us with a recommendation, and we would take it under consideration with the planning commission and zoning, whatever.
Correct.
To make a decision.
Right.
You know, and you know, the abstract just sounds great. Unfortunately, Ferrisburg is pretty landlocked. We don't have a whole lot of developable property.
And I think that is an issue that, I mean, the city of Grand Haven has the same thing, you know, the village of Spring Lake says the same thing, but that's why when we talk about just different ideas, all different concepts, you know, not just the idea of building new developments and new complexes, but any kind of a thing that you can do that helps with affordable or even sustainable housing. You know, at my office, I talk about this a lot here, but we get calls every day for people who just need help being sustainable where they are, you know, because there are not programs that have the funds to help them stay there. You know, they have a wage that allows them to live where they live, but they're not able to save a lot of money or any money. And so when it comes, their maintenance is delayed, and so then it comes down to, I need $10,000 for a roof, or I need $5,000 for a furnace, which are the estimates that we see. You know, it used to be $5,000 for a roof, and now it's not. So, you know, even if there's a public acquisition fund that can help someone in that sort of a program, or funds that can supplement the programs that we already have. Our most recent grant that we got, our first project that we're trying to do, we ran into, it's federal money. It requires a lead inspection. The house has lead, and the lead abatement is going to cost over $20,000. Well, when I have $20,000 in lead abatement, I can't now do $25,000 in repairs to that home because I only have $36,000 for the entire house project. So, you know, if it's a fund that allows for supplementing another program, again, that works towards sustainability.
We, oh, excuse me, we participate in that Tri-Cities
Yes.
housing with
Yes.
upgrades, or what
Yes.
I forget the exact term of it. So this would augment what you're suggesting is ways to augment that in the regard that we can help them, our residents, come up to standards.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, so where's the funding coming from?
Well, that's where, once you form a commission and you start looking at what the options are, I think that's where, you know, that's what you start to work on as a commission. That's what you decide, and that's what you figure out. There are some different options there.
That's why we participated in that housing development fund, because we were led to believe that if the three communities went together, that we had better chances of higher county, state, and federal grant money to expand that program. Now, from what you're telling me, that's not happening at this point?
Well, when you're talking about specific to our department, no, those things that we talked to you about have happened. Your support to our department and allowing us the funds that you've given us that allows us, you know, that supplement our operating funds do allow us to operate the NIP program. We had a very successful season with that. We had 11 projects. $96,000 in home repairs went into the Tri-Cities area. I think I shared that report. Yes.
Read that report.
Yeah. And we also were able to get the grant that 2 years ago we didn't get, but we were awarded a grant from the state of Michigan for homeowner repair and home purchase repair. And that grant, for the first time, they allowed us to expand that. Used to be when we got these in the past, it had to be a select neighborhood right within the city limits. This time we were allowed to use that money. We can, City of Ferrysburg, Spring Lake Township, City of Grand Haven, and Grand Haven Township. That whole entire area, which is something that Michigan's never done before. It's a small amount of money. It's the second highest amount that they were able to award to any area. So we were excited to get the second highest amount. We were excited they expanded the area, but it only allows us to do 4 projects.
Your proposal here, the commission is going to make recommendations to expand that project and make specific recommendations as far as rezoning certain areas of the city, Grand Haven or Ferrysburg, whatever, to allow multi-family. Is that where this is heading?
I think potentially, yeah. I don't think that I don't think that we've decided necessarily that all of the areas would need to change their zoning ordinances. I think that would be conversations that would be had. It would be things that, you know, possibly if, you know, you looked at your ordinance and decided that that is a restrictive thing, that maybe it could be changed. I don't know that it would get to a point where the commission would necessarily be recommending that. I think the idea is with a regional approach and different sort of funding options that we could do what we do, but just do it bigger.
Maybe
Discussions too.
the and I've got to run. I'm really sorry about that.
That's fine.
I do have to be at the meeting, but the neighborhood housing services that we currently have was one of the bullets on that one slide, and then the last bullet on that slide was the idea of forming a housing commissioner authority. You know, that if we're going to keep coming around and asking you guys to participate with our handout, well, maybe we get to a point where it's like, well, you all want to vote on that board, or you want direct input, and maybe we get to that point where we say, well, let's set up an authority that we all have an equal seat at the table, where we're all being accountable to our various constituencies by being on a board. Right now, I don't want another meeting to go to every month, but if we decide to go that route, okay, we can do that. Right now, we're okay doing it with the city department. We come over here, and it's kind of like transit was. You know, transit was a city department. We worked with Ferrysburg and Spring Lake. We had a contract. At one point, we decided, let's go with an authority, and that gets everybody on board. We've all got seats at that table. So maybe this goes that way. It was just a perhaps. And city council said, yeah, we'd support that. So they put it in the plan. They'd support getting together and doing some sort of authority. Maybe our neighbors would, maybe they wouldn't. And then the idea of, you know, what about a millage? Does this mean you're going to tax more? Like, only if the people want it. If people decide this is important enough, this is something we don't want our kids facing homelessness, we don't want our aging people to have to move to Muskegon or Holland or Grand Rapids because they can't afford to live here, maybe we do want to throw a couple dollars in the kitty and help some of these projects get off the ground when they're just not quite getting there yet. You know, there's a lot of opportunity out there, a lot of the properties that are already used for something. And I look here, and we've got a lot of commercial property along the river on this side of the river that someday might not be that. Maybe around the edge of Ottawa Sands, we can put some nice housing, so someday Roger and others can have a nice place there. A lot of opportunity out there, and this is just a step. You know, this is just, and the idea here, and the idea of coming here, is that we're just talking about it now. And if we keep talking about it, it stays. When I hear from my council, here's a list of 10 things you can work on, and we're gonna support you. It's inspirational. You know, it gives us, and it gives Rhonda and the staff, like, let's go get them. You know, we know we've got those 5 people behind us. If we got all the Tri-Cities and the townships to all say, yeah, we agree with this stuff too, that inspires your leadership to do maybe the same thing.
You know, like you say, I'm in support of it in theory, but you know, with no vacant land to develop, so you're gonna have to tear down a house to put a house up. basically is where we're at in Ferrisburg. I mean, there's very little vacant land. Couple, what, 8 or 9 lots in the entire city at most.
Those many hours we spent kicking this around, came up more than once. A lot of our housing that people would consider low value or something, that's housing some of our moderate income populations now. Gentrification, you know, you go and you tear that down and put up new stuff, well, the price just went way up.
Exactly.
Now you did boot them out. So it's a complex issue. We need professional help in a journey. It's not gonna happen in a short time. And local government can't do it on their own. That's why we're looking to private industry and federal government,
Collaboration
state
of
government.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody else seems to be talking about it, so we thought we should be talking about it.
Well, you're a good talker, Pat.
Yeah, well, what can I do? Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Well,
Any more questions?
I certainly support the intent. I just don't know, I need to see more details on how we're gonna implement this, because, yeah, like Pat said, it doesn't make sense to tear down a house that you're renting for $500 a month and build one that you're gonna rent for $1,000 a month.
Exactly,
You
no.
know,
that
we
does
just
not make
defeated
sense.
the entire purpose of
Exactly.
what we wanted to do.
Yes.
I would be, I would be in favor of taking more of a look at this, having somebody, I would like to have somebody from the city of Ferrisburg as a representative on the,
Yeah.
for input.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor of that.
Are others? Take a look at
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
to see what's
Yeah,
going on?
sure.
Okay.
A thought would be maybe Pat Twall would be interested in doing it, because he's kinda involved with Habitat and
Yeah.
low income, you know.
Yeah.
Value as far
He
as
could-
his,
yeah, he
he
could
has,
bring a lot of
you know, a
value.
lot
Yes.
of knowledge
Yep.
and how to
Absolutely.
get funding and stuff. for
Yes,
stuff
and
like
we
that.
have some, actually what I have is, I have a whole bunch of sheets of paper taped across my office for all the different, you know, all the different possibilities of what a commission could possibly do and different ways to create a fund. You know, there are some things that they do very successfully in other states. But I think as a group, possibly as a group before we, you know, decide to form an official authority or commission, that's the type of stuff we would talk about maybe. But exactly. Yes. That's a good idea. I like
Councils of all the Tri-Cities can just come and chit chat,
that. Yep, I like that idea.
get ideas
Sure.
going.
Maybe that
It's
would be
good
our-
in theory, you know,
I
but yeah,
know.
but how do we implement the theory?
I know. I'd really like to see us go past a theory.
Yeah,
But-
without downgrading what we have and not making it a place where people come because it's free either.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And
You know what I'm
yes.
saying?
Yep, there are some very
Um,
successful, very nice.
There's a fine line there.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Certainly this area is unique because of the resortness of it. Everybody wants to live here. I appreciate your goal there about everyone who works here should be able to live in Grand Haven. That's a lofty goal. It might be somewhat unrealistic. That's happening in many other resort communities where the people that are working in the service industries can't make enough money to live in high dollar neighborhoods, which this whole area is a high dollar neighborhood. It's going to be getting worse and worse and worse. What are other communities doing? We're not the only resort community in the country.
No.
What are other communities doing?
Well, one of the communities that I have just a little bit of knowledge about is Traverse City. It's a big problem there that they can't staff the restaurants and the retail stores because you can't make $9 or $10 an hour and drive 45 minutes to work, but that's the only place you can afford to live. Traverse City has actually built some multi-use developments. They built some developments for homeless individuals, and they've done the multi-income type developments, the mixed use. So they have market rate apartments along with the affordable rate apartments in the same complex.
I came here 6 years ago from Petoskey Harbor Springs, and that's a lot of the restaurateurs have shuttles coming in from the neighboring communities. Like here, they'd be coming from Sparta or where Nunica or wherever to bring them into the city to work because it's too expensive to travel, because they can't even make enough money to keep their wheels on the road, let alone support an apartment.
And maybe that's one of the things that, you know, the group would decide is good. Not everybody who works here necessarily would even want to live here. So if that is the biggest need, is shuttle transportation so people can be brought in from other areas, then that could possibly be an idea. That could be what funds could be used for.
If I may say one more thing. And that is one of the things that we had talked about since I've served on the board, which has just been a year now, or on the council, it's just been a year, was little houses. And I can't remember what development that was that we talked about. Do you remember, Sandy, what? Tiny houses? And that concept of being able to shove more housing, because everybody should be able to realistically be able to afford and pursue the American dream of home ownership. And it's concerning to me when there's plenty of housing in Grand Haven. The vast majority of it, though, is sitting empty tonight because it's resorters from Chicago or wherever, and they're not even here.
Yep.
The heat's on. There's lots of warm housing in town tonight that's not being used. And a small housing allows you more density, but then it also allows people the opportunity for home ownership. And that's a zoning issue and a building code issue for square footage.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's something that wasn't discussed that I think really should be pursued.
No, I agree. I think that can be a great idea. What I personally have seen right now is that the tiny houses are trendy, so they're very expensive. Very expensive. I mean, for the size that you're paying $150,000 for 400 square feet. Yeah, paying a lot more. But that
The house.
Maybe
I know
our,
it's hard- it's
maybe our,
hard to believe, but
maybe our
that's what's going
construction
on.
expert, Mr. Twa, could come up with something that would
Exactly.
be
There you go.
more of a Habitat for Humanity concept
sure.
rather than
that would be-
gold-plated fixtures or something. 'Cause
Exactly.
I find that hard to believe, but
That would be something that the group, the coalition could look at as
Yes.
possibly
Yeah.
vamping zoning ordinances
Yeah.
to
Allow them.
accommodate something like that.
yeah. I'd much rather see tiny house development going up in my neighborhood than I would apartment complex, where you have renters rather than people that are in ownership situation.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's the whole idea is that, you get together and you just explore all options, I don't think anything at this point should be off the table.
To address one point you made, Harbor Transit has been looking at making a connection with Muskegon Transit for the last 2 or 3 years. At this point, Craig, nothing has happened. We're still trying to get, everybody's got their little fiefdom, and the little fight is on whether we can actually cross the city, we're working on it. Nothing at this point, nothing definite has happened, but it is under discussion. We've been working on it for a couple of years. So just to bring that point up, that has been addressed, and Pat and I and Craig and a couple other people on the board have tried to push, we're trying to, actually, I believe we got a study for that, didn't we? We got some cash for a study. So I think that study's underway at this point. So we are trying to make progress on that.
Something that's been done like that I'm familiar with is Sheboygan County and Emmett County. Emmett County is Petoskey, and Sheboygan County, of course, is Sheboygan south of the bridge. And that they have a regional transportation authority set up because Sheboygan County has a tremendous amount of lower income people and high unemployment compared to Emmett County. And so they do bus people in great big buses every day, either into restaurants or the manufacturing sector. So that might be something to look at. Model it after that.
The problem we have is Harbor Transit is specific to the 5 communities that are participants. It's not a regional authority. It's, specific to, and we pay taxes to support it. It's not like a countywide thing. It's, a Tri-City area thing. Sure. So to make that connection, seems like we've ran into a lot of problems. They don't want us up there, and we don't want them down here, and it's a turf war.
But at least it's been brought out and it's in discussion.
We're trying.
And there's doing some studies on that.
More discussion, yes, and more ideas. The more you talk, the more you get.
Yeah.
So any further discussion or questions for Rhonda tonight?
Okay,
Anything
well,
she can take
thank
back?
you for having me. I will communicate with Craig possibly after, I think Pat and I are done with all our meetings now, so we'll kind of decide maybe the next step and reach out to you, and you'll be hearing from us. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Okay. Work session has been adjourned. Now we will call the meeting to order for. I'd like to call the Ferrisburg City Council meeting to order tonight, Monday, December 17, 2018, at 7:04. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hop,
Here.
Councilmember Kennedy, Councilmember DeWitt, Councilmember Twa, Councilmember O'Donnell,
Here.
Councilmember Carlson,
Here.
Councilmember Blees.
Still here.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Make the same motion to, excuse Councilmember Twa.
Okay.
Second.
Motion support. Further discussion? All those in favor stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passed. Right now, the invocation will be given by myself, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And please stand. Dear Heavenly Father, who brought love into the world, be the love that dwells between us. Who brought peace into the world, be the peace that dwells between us. Who brought joy to the world, be the joy that dwells between us. Please protect all men and women that are in uniform and keep them safe from harm. We give you thanks for bringing our hearts to life during this Christmas season. We pray this in your holy name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I'd like to add one item to the agenda, please.
Okay.
Discussion and take action if appropriate to approve change order number 1 for the City Hall roof project, not to exceed $7,500.
Okay. We're adding that to the agenda for I, so it'll be on the third page. Okay. Moving forward with item number 5, public comment. At this time on the agenda is for any citizen to direct brief comment or question to City Council. Time for public comments will be given when an agenda item is discussed. If you have a comment or question, please raise your hand to be recognized by the mayor. After being recognized by the mayor, please stand, give your name and address for the record. Proceed with your comment or question. Please limit your comment to 3 minutes. Public comments? Yes.
Sandy Tuggle, 17939 Dogwood. Did you say you would prefer public comments at the time of the agenda item?
Correct. If it
Okay,
relates to
so
that
for
agenda item.
8D, you will allow public comment?
Yes.
Thanks.
Any additional public comments? Yes, sir.
Roger Jonas, 16038 Harbor Point Drive, Chairman of the Planning Commission, but also on the Ottawa County Parks and Recreation Commission as well. Just want to give you a brief update. I want to talk about 8 CD&E at the time, but a brief update on Ottawa Sands. You might have seen the press release. The Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund granted us the remaining request that we had to purchase the rest of Ottawa Sands. Land Conservancy has held that for the last year as a placeholder, and so we'll be able to do that. We'll probably won't close on that property until about, because it has to go through the legislature and the governor, which is most of the time a formality. Close on that property next summer. Master planning process will start then next fall. So just everybody knows, nothing's going to happen on that property for a while, because first of all, we don't have the funds that we had allocated. This came up so fast. Second of all, without doing a master planning process, we can't outline what exactly people would like to see there, how to develop the whole property and go through the process. I'm hoping that we'll have public hearings. I'm hoping they'll be in this room. It'd be appropriate like we did before. And so it'll be an extensive process on master planning. Right now, hundreds of people have been able to use go out there and hike it and go around and everything. Please, everybody enjoy it in its pristine state, because it's going to stay that way for a little while, but it will change over time. But there are trails out there, there's fishing, catch and release, no live bait in the lake, and take advantage of it while you can. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of parking on the south side of the road, but unless you start clearing trees and do all that stuff, it's, you hate to do that right away. So the city has allowed Coast Guard Park to be used for overflow parking. So if you plan to hike the 1.7 mile trail around the lake, it's not that much further to go from Coast Guard Park across the street, and then add that to your trail experience. So thank you. I just want to bring an update on to you on that, and I'd like to talk about master plan and the other two things when we get to them. Thanks.
And we'll move down to item 6, was a continuation of our work session, which would be the boards and commissions. So in our packet today, or in our packet we received, there's information that was in there regarding individuals' boards that they sit on, how long they've been committed to that board, and so for all those years. I know that it was discussed on the back about, on that paper, on how much it would cost if we offered $25 per meeting, and that total would be $11,450 for each of the individuals, for all of the people serving on our boards. So it was asked to be brought up, so we've had it a couple different times but didn't complete it, so now we're bringing it back up again for further discussion. Yes,
It's a big chunk out of the budget,
yes it is.
and Craig, we don't have room really to grant that kind of money, do we? It'd be hard work.
We might have to do some adjusting on other things to compensate for that expenditure.
Okay. Mike, didn't you have another idea to, what was it, $100 per person per year?
One thought I had that we kicked around 3, 4, 5 months ago is at the city party, maybe $100 gift card per board member per year. It's just something that was discussed and kicked around. I don't know whether that's going to be a whole lot less than what we're looking at here. I'm assuming it would be, but that was just something that was we talked about quite some time ago. That
We just threw that out there to try to see if we can entice people to go out for these boards, because we still have absences on some of them.
one thing we wanted to discuss also is whether we wanted to put term limits on some of the on the boards. As I recall, the last discussion we had was a 9-year limit, because most of these boards are appointed for a 3-year term. That would be 3 3-year terms. I think a lot of the problem we have getting people on these boards is it's automatic. Somebody, applies for reappointment. It's automatic, so people don't consider filling out an application because they think that the old boys network is going to automatically be reappointed, as it were. So one of the proposals that we discussed was 3 3-year terms, which would be a 9-year limit on any board, which would, if we enacted it, would anybody in a term now would fill out the remainder of their term if they had more than 9 years in. So that was kind of what we had discussed.
Any other discussion? So we discussed possible reimbursement. We brought up what term limits. Yes, no?
Well, term limits, what do you do if you have someone who is termed out, but we have no volunteers to fill that position? We just leave it vacant? That person's willing to fill, to,
We have vacancies now.
I know.
Ask
Well,
Scott.
but the problem,
I think you're gonna run in, how many people do we refuse or turn away right now?
well, how many people don't apply because they feel they have no, possibility of getting, appointed? I mean, I personally, approached 4 people to fill the zoning board, vacancies. And they said, well, why should we apply? Because you automatically reappoint everybody. Well, we didn't automatically reappoint someone, and we had people come forward, which we reappointed new people. So, you know, I mean, there is something to be said for the experience. Like Roger's been, you know, here since before dirt was invented. You know, so, you know, the experience you've had in the planning commission is a valuable asset. But at the same time, you're ancient. You know, if we appointed somebody younger, they have different outlook on the prospects of how the city should develop and different outlooks on life in general. Hey, it's true. Go on. Go.
I just wanted it being recorded.
Oh, yeah. Well, in you know, in my mind, I would like to see some fresh young blood, and we finally got some young blood on the zoning board. You know, everybody on the zoning board's in there. I think I'm the youngest, and I'm 68. You know, we look at things differently
So
than.
now we've talked about term limits, possibly, 3-year term limits. Do we want to discuss boards and commissions anymore? Do we want this to become an agenda item, and then we can put some teeth into this? Or do we want to just?
Well, I would like to see
move
some
along?
kind of decision made, whether we want to.
Okay, because it's just a work session, so we would just.
Right. But, you know, at this point, we're discussing it. Whether we want to make a, you know, it was brought up, you know, I would like to see a number as far as if we gave all the board members a $100 gift card, what that number is as opposed to $11,500.
About 48 people on here, so $4,800.
So it's less, it's half.
Rather than a gift card, I could see, first and foremost, I appreciate your service, Roger.
Well, absolutely, I do too, but.
Secondly, rather than doing a gift card, I could certainly see remunerating people $100 for their time, and that helps to hold people accountable because they've got skin in the game. And then term limits would be a great way to churn the bucket up.
I'm all for term limits. I always have that. That's not been a secret.
But now term limits haven't worked out all that well in the state legislature because of the fact that we lose the wisdom of someone who served as long as Roger. And so in some regards, that hasn't worked out all that well. But in this case,
It's kind of an all or nothing thing, though.
Yes.
Okay. Either you have it or you don't.
So is the budget able to,
Handle
a
48.
5,000? I mean, depending, because there are some vacancies.
Just to take that a step further, so if someone has 12 meetings a year, they automatically get the $100, and if someone misses 2 meetings, does they still get the 100, or?
Yeah,
Attendance
I'd say
rate?
80% attendance record.
So they can miss 2 meetings.
Right.
75% attendance rate? I mean,
I don't
75
know. I don't
would
like,
is-
I mean, life happens.
correct.
Well, let's say,
Right.
I mean, look what happened to me. I mean, you know,
Right.
and
Let's say-
Richard's wife and stuff. I mean, your life spins on a dime. I think you give them $100, you give them $100.
And also you got to administer it, and it just gets to be too much of a hassle. I think you remunerate them, and then you strictly enforce the whatever the attendance is. You miss 3 meetings, and you're done.
let's say 50%.
You're done.
Because, you know, after all, they are volunteers, and, you know, I mean, things come up, you know, your wife gets sick, you know, I get sick, or whatever. You miss meetings occasionally, or vacations, you know.
So if we put this on the agenda, then to discuss a percent or a number of attendance meetings?
You're gonna run into a problem with percentage too. You got boards that meet 3 times a year.
Right.
They miss 1 meeting, they're out.
or there's a board that meets once a year.
Well, 50% of the scheduled meetings.
Well, we have it already on the books. If you miss 3 meetings, you're done.
Yep.
Well, that's where
Well, why don't we, well, absolutely, you know, I mean,
Then the rec commission
either,
had
either you're gonna
openings
have
and
term
now it's
limits
filled.
or you're not.
But the rec commissions had openings for
Now
3,
it's-
4
now it's
years.
filled.
right.
Right.
Or you're, yep, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, my thoughts for the term limits, I like the ideas for some situations, but like on the rec committee, if we have somebody on there that's, you know, still wants to be on the committee, and we still have 3 openings, it's silly to get rid of that person, and then you have 4 openings. So, yeah, in that scenario, it's not gonna work for like the rec committee, because we can't get enough people. Or Kitchell Lindquist, but I guess the solution for that is you could have a term limit to that committee only if there's people applying that want to, you know, get in. So you could do, you could do if somebody's been there a long time and you have more people applying for positions, then yeah, you could term limit that person out. But if there's not enough people applying, they would just stay in that position
Because council
until.
has this, if there's an open seat, then like the election and there wasn't somebody to fill the seat, there's just a vacant seat at that point following the election, and then it opens up and then people are appointed.
Yeah.
So do we have that for a timeline, and then by July 1 that's not filled, then it opens back?
Yeah, you could do a timeline or.
So that the board can appoint somebody instead of the mayor, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
Well, sure, that you could accept applications or so that would. So if we advertise for 6 months.
Right.
Because I know a lot of boards that I served on, you're turning that out, and go back on the board that have here, but those boards.
Brought up, you know, several times by the audience in the past that, people don't apply because, you know, we don't consider them. Well, I always consider every applicant, but the tendency is, because we know Roger, that we would reappoint Roger as opposed to a new person, because we know the known quantity of Roger. But by the same token, we need new blood on the boards.
Plus, if you know your term's coming up, you can start talking to people and try to get the interest to get people to apply.
Well, and Roger could go from the planning commission to the zoning board, or Kitchell Lindquist, you know, you could.
You can board hop.
Yeah, you could board hop. Yeah,
Rec committee.
you could skip around, Roger.
Okay, so does staff have enough information at this point?
I like the idea of I don't like term limits, never have, never will. But if we have term limits, at least have a mechanism in place, such as if the position is not filled by July, or a certain time.
Well, if you're term limited, after a year, you can come back on, right?
We can write it in that
We
way,
can
and I
write-
would,
You
yeah,
can even write 6 months.
for 6 months or something.
Or we could put something on there that you're term limited, and if we can't fill it within 6 months, city council has discretion to reappoint.
If the individual
Some
chooses
of that
they would
nature.
want it to be reappointed, sure.
Does that make,
But staff has enough information to move
In
forward.
Parks and Recs, you know, they're gonna be getting stuff, well, they'll wanna be meeting if the Fire Barn Park gets the funding and stuff and gets going. They're gonna want to meet, and then if they can't meet, then that puts a delay in the park getting done. So, Okay.
Moving down to 7 on the agenda, consideration approval of consent agenda. A, approve the December 3, 2018 City Council meeting minutes as printed, and B, adopt 2019 city goals.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Further discussion? All those in favor stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Down to 8, new business. A, discussion take action if appropriate to adopt the ordinance number 297, an ordinance to create a tree board. And this goes in conjunction with Tree City USA that we discussed at the December 3rd meeting.
Your Honor, it looks
Yes.
like the questions that were raised at the last meeting have been taken care of.
I'll support.
Amplifying what Tim was saying, I reread the new ordinance as proposed and got some reassurance from Craig that if perchance we had to, due to budgetary constraints, we had to eliminate brush chipping and leaf pickup, which designated toward the support of that, the monies to that, we would still have enough with the tree trimming we do on the bike paths and such, we would still qualify. And there's no obligation to us long-term that if we don't qualify, we can just back out.
Exactly.
So in that regard, that all my concerns at the last meeting have been addressed.
We had talked about the right-of-way, like along Dogwood, where the electric utility had come in and knocked down a bunch of pine trees, and the stumps are still sitting there. Is that something that, since it's in the right-of-way, is that our responsibility? Or the homeowner's responsibility to dig all those stumps out, or the electric utilities?
It's not the utilities.
Okay.
They're not gonna take
So
care of
who's-
it.
So who's gonna pay for it?
The homeowner takes care of the property that's in the right of way.
The homeowner wanted to keep his trees, I'm sure. And because the utility decides it's in the right of way and they come in and whack them all down, now I gotta pay to if I'm the homeowner, I gotta pay to dig up the stumps? How about planting trees of my own species choice on my own property? Can I do that?
Own property, yes.
Okay, not in the right of way though. Not between the sidewalk and the street.
If it's on the list, you can. If you have something different you want to plant, then you have to get permission from the tree board.
Okay.
Just to clarify one thing, Rich, according to the ordinance, you don't have to remove the stumps. You can grind them down to what, an inch below the surface of the, they can be ground down. You don't have to pay to remove them. You can grind them down to what, I believe it's a 1 inch below the ground level, if I'm not mistaken. So they could be ground down rather than yanked out. Like you say, pulling the stumps and hauling them away is a big expense.
No, but I mean, even grinding isn't inexpensive.
Yeah, we've brought that up several times. In fact, we investigated that particular case with utilities and everything else, and
They won't do it.
they don't do it. We're stuck. But no, go ahead. No.
Okay. So this ordinance 297 goes along with the Tree City USA, and it also is attached to Arbor Day celebration, which in the packet that you received at the last council meeting, it would be celebrated April 29. So we would be working for a celebration for Arbor Day. So there's a motion on the table, and support, and we've had a discussion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Moving down to 8B, discussion take action if appropriate to adopt ordinance number 298, an ordinance to change the composition of Kitchell and Coast Hardcore Dunes Preserve Board from 9 members to 7 members.
Motion to approve.
Motion support. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving down to 7C. Discussion take action if appropriate to adopt the resolution adopting the master plan. At this time, Roger, do you want to come up and speak?
Thank you. Thank you, Roger Jonas. Thank you, Councilman DeWitt, for the kind words.
Just call it like I see it.
Anyway, I'll speak more on that on the final public comment section. I've got some thoughts to share. We finally got around to adopting master plan. We weren't required by law to do a whole rewrite on time. We did because we weren't changing it substantially, so we passed within the 5 years of the first part of it, which was saying we're in compliance. There were very minor changes. But what you see, and I think you all may have gotten copies, or at least electronically, of the formal draft, October 16, 2018. We delayed this somewhat for a very good reason, and that was because a year ago at this time, Ottawa Sands was up in the air as to whether the county was going to be able to purchase it as a park, and that's when the first grant came through from the DNR trust fund. Then, so we knew that property was probably going to change. We weren't sure until we finally got around to this fall. We were able to determine with the Land Conservancy in there, it was going to be a reality. And so we wanted to change what the designation of that property was, what the current use for future use. So it took it off the table as far as a lot of things going on there, because that affected several of the things we had, including transportation plan. So what you have in front of you, or had to take a look at, is the latest rendition, up to date. We mainly changed the format that it's in. The fonts changed. We had a lot more pictures and graphics. And the big thing we changed was we updated the word processing used on the last one was Windows 2007. We thought it might be a good idea to get it in current format for future use and be able to update and everything. So a lot of those changes went on. We do have our goals in there that we had consensus on. A lot of the things, we did have a public gathering in this room before we got to the process of finalizing it, so we had public input on what residents want. We tried to tailor it to that and tailor it to especially highlighting a lot of the unique features in the city of Ferrysburg. And I'd like to, I'll reiterate this again. We like to think of ourselves as a quote bedroom community. I've never liked that term, but I say we're a lot more than that. We're bounded by 3 separate bodies of water, and I'm not sure how many cities in the country can make that claim, with a lake, 2 lakes and a river. We are bisected by a 4-lane divided highway. We have a railroad that runs through town. We have the port of entry, where we have ships coming, 50 ships a year internationally also. So Ferrysburg is a port of entry as far as customs. Over Plank Dock gets it, St. Mary's the cement gets the ships that come in. So we have a lot of that shipping that goes on. We have smaller industrial sections of the city. We have 3 public schools, 2 charter schools, and 1 Grand Haven area public school. We have a great variety of housing, and I would disagree with Councilman Carlson in that not every place in the city has high-end housing. There are places right across the street that in the Old Town section that kind of fit that bill. So just keep an open mind on some stuff. I'll go talk about that later. But anyway, I like the uniqueness of Ferrysburg, where we have the cottage district that we've carved out. You talk about clever zoning things that we did there because it was so unique. And then we've carved out a lot of the other different areas too as far as zoning goes. And you mentioned tiny houses, and I think somebody was going to put one at the mobile home park down there, and I don't know how that's going to work out, but that would be a upgrade, in my opinion. But they are expensive, I agree. I think we get Councilman Twa and we'll get an assembly line going. We can bang those out here. We've got space. But anyway, so that's kind of an update on what we did, and it includes a lot of things, and I think it highlights our, again, uniqueness of our city, and a lot of things going on here. It's a great place to live, work, play, do whatever, and my family loves coming here. I know that. So if you have any questions, be more than happy to answer.
Support.
Motion support. Okay, further questions, discussion
Add one more comment. This is the fifth master plan I've been involved with.
that you have done?
One every 10 years?
Any additional questions? Comments regarding this document?
No.
Nope. All right, hearing none. All those in favor stating aye?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much for your hard work, you and the rest of the planning commission. Truly appreciate it. Okay, moving down to 7D. Introduction of ordinance number 299, ordinance to amend zoning ordinance section 2.20 definitions and adding section 9.145P zone district parks and preserves. And I know that Sandy Tuggle would like to speak and Roger Jonas also? Okay.
Sandy Tuggle, 17939 Dogwood. This has been discussed for the last couple years, so I just wanted to bring up a couple of points. I know that you guys aren't voting on this tonight, it's just an introduction. But I've been to all the planning commission meetings and listened through, I know David came up with a really good definition of the Parks and Preserve zoning district. And I think there had been a lot of confusion here and there, so I'll try and just clear up a couple of points. This would encompass all of the parks defined in section 9402 of the city charter. It doesn't have anything to do with vacant land or, city property like City Hall or anything like that. It's only just for anything defined in section 9402 for parks. Those are also designated in the master plan. One of the problems was the existing and the future land use maps and the zoning maps had many inconsistencies that created confusion for the residents and the developers when the parks are zoned as residential. Structures are even prohibited in parks by ordinance, so the residential zoning is misleading. I think a couple of these have been cleaned up since I first I made this little diagram of where the inconsistencies were, but this is all the parks defined in 9402 of the city charter is a Coast Guard park. The existing land use was park and recreation. The zoning was RD, and the future land use was public, semi-public. Fire Barn Park, existing land use was parks and recreation. Zoning was RG2. Future land use, public, semi-public. William Ferry Park, existing land use was parks and rec. Zoning RG1. Future land use, public, semi-public. I could go through the whole list, but you guys get the idea. So the charter amendment last year that it put the fate of the parks in the hands of the residents was passed by 81.1 of Ferrysburg voters. So currently it's not up to the council or to the planning commission of whether or not a park is to be sold. It must be voted on by the community. Since parks can't be sold without the vote of the people, and some can never be sold because of deed restrictions, it only makes sense to zone them as parks, not as residential. If a park is ever considered to be sold, there would have to be a development plan, and then the residents would vote whether or not to sell the park at the next election. When and if this ever happens, the planning commission and council could then zone the land to accommodate the project, but until then, the zoning should only be a parks recreation designation. I looked around and found several other zoning maps of neighboring areas that also zone their parks as parks or recreation. Saugatuck is open space, Norton Shores is recreational, Spring Lake Township public, Spring Lake Village public, Whitehall open space conservation recreation. So there are a lot of other communities that do zone them as parks of recreation and not residential. At the master plan public input open house, the residents voiced protecting their parks as the #1 priority. And the general comments at Station 6, the frequency of comments, #1 was to save, protect, and do not sell parks. At Station 3, the Your Priority Station, number 1 was promote and preserve green space in the city. Zoning parks is also listed as a goal on the master plan draft. And it is also the goal number 3 in planning principles. It is also action number 8 in the master plan, and that calls to create a zoning district that is dedicated to parks and preserves. City planner has created a great park zoning district and the definition for this purpose. But I hope you guys all take this in consideration, at the next meeting when you do vote. Please follow through with this goal, action item, and priority of the residents by voting yes to zone parks of what they actually are as parks. Thank you.
Roger Jonas, this, as Sandy mentioned, is one of the goals that we had in the master plan was to create the zoning. This zoning change allows us to designate certain areas. It doesn't rezone any properties, but it gives us another definition within the ordinances to be able to do that. So that's what we're looking at tonight, just be able to create another zoning district, which we never had. So we may perhaps use it in the future.
Good job, Roger.
Any other discussion? It was just, all right. There we go. So, moving down to E, introduction of ordinance number 300, an ordinance to amend zoning ordinance. Section 7.20, definition, and section 7.60, sign regulation applicable to all districts. So this is just your first read going through.
What's the difference between the existing ordinance we have now?
This is just to clean up a little bit. We're adding the special event sign under definitions. And on section 2, number 1, the last sentence, it should read 7.70. Currently, it reads 7.60. Those are the two changes.
Not changing number of signs, the size, or anything like
No,
that?
this is just a cleanup on the existing zoning ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions or concerns? No? All right. Moving down to F. Discussion and take action, if appropriate, approve the first amended Articles of Incorporation Northwest Ottawa Recreational Authority, which is actually NORA, the acronym. So.
Your Honor?
Yes.
We have the NORA director here. She might want to speak on this.
Okay. Come
on. Thought you were going to be a spectator, Dan.
Well, I was just coming to watch, but Jackie Rowland, NORA interim coordinator at the moment. What you have before you is just an amended Articles of Incorporation. In 2009, the NORP became NORA, the article, the authority with the state of Michigan, allowing municipalities to band together. And now, recently, the state of Michigan passed allowing school districts to join. So this is just the first amendment. Grand Haven Area Public Schools would like to join the authority as voting members of the board. So, all right, thank you.
So right now there are a member and do have one vote. With this change, they would have 2 votes on the board, just like each community would.
Correct in assuming that the school district is no longer going to administer the funds, that is going to be taken over by the city of Grand Haven?
Correct.
And this allows that?
Yes.
Is that why we are appointing 2 board members from the schools because they gave that up, or is that not interconnected?
Not connected, no.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So the school will become a full member, but they're not going to contribute financially. They'll continue contributing with their in-kind services providing fields and buildings and stuff like that.
I was on it quite a long time ago and then just came back on it a couple months ago. But no, I think this is just a copy of the Articles of Inc. with the updates in there, and all the, you know, municipalities are gonna go through it and okay it, so we want to do the same thing.
Would you like a motion, Your Honor? I would make a motion that we approve the First Amendment Articles of Incorporation for the Northwest Ottawa Recreation Board, known as NORA.
Motion and support. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving down to G, discussion take action if appropriate to approve the video franchise with Charter Communications to authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the agreement. So we would need
Charter wants to come in here, is that what?
a motion and support to move forward with the discussion with this. Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve video franchise with Charter Communications and authorize mayor and city clerk sign the agreement.
Support.
Motion support. Further discussion around this information.
Craig, originally, didn't we sign an exclusive agreement with Comcast?
No. We had Ferrisburg had original contract for cable TV with Comcast. And then that was a 30-year agreement. We still have that agreement with Comcast to provide video and cable services to the residents of Ferrisburg. Back in 2007, the state changed the way cable companies applied for a franchise with the community. They came up with a standard uniform agreement that everybody uses to, if they want to come into a community, they use that same agreement. In 2008, AT&T with UVerse came into the city. The exact same contract that's in your packet was used to apply for a franchise agreement with the city. That was approved back in 2008. Now we have a franchise agreement with Charter for your consideration. For a number of years, the city has invited Charter to come into the city. They have always declined, but we do have one now.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Moving down to item H, Mayor's Proclamation commemorating School of Choice Week. The information was in your book. The School of Choice Week is January 20 to January 26, 2019. Thought it was very applicable for Ferrisburg to consider this, having the two School of Choice already here, the Montessori and also West Michigan Academy of the Arts.
We need a motion, Your Honor?
We would.
I would make a motion that we approve the mayor's proclamation.
Support. Motion and support. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Our newest addition is going to be I, discussion, take action if appropriate, to approve the change order number 1 for City Hall project not to exceed $7,500. And that additional information is on the desk tonight.
So the roofing company's up there replacing the City Hall roof. As they come and uncover some of the wood, it has become known that it's rotten, and we want to replace it. Over the gym, the roof it does a 90-degree. When it does that, the water is running down the side of the gym wall. We're starting to have problems with water getting into the bricks and so forth. They recommend that they build that roof out another 3 or 4 inches and encapsulate that with fascia, steel fascia, try to get the water away from the side of the building when it runs down. No. They didn't know what they were going to get into once they take off some of that fascia. And there's some other things up there that they were pointing out that we got to look at too.
When we discussed the new roof going on, we anticipated issues like this coming up, and we knew there was gonna be a cost overrun, because of, we didn't know the damage underneath and the recommendations they were going to make to improve, but in this particular case, the drainage and such what. So, this is not a surprise. It was not not unforeseen. Walking that roof, I would be surprised if this is the only overrun we're gonna have.
I was offered that opportunity and I declined today.
Smart girl. You wouldn't fall through, you're too skinny.
I don't know. Thanks, God.
Would you like a motion, Your Honor? I'll make it. To pay it, to approve it.
Support.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
All those in favor stating aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Down to 9, public comment. Any additional public comments? Yes, sir. Please state your name for the record.
Roger Jonas. Gets harder and harder to get up off of the chair because I'm old, right?
Intimidating when you don't have your pitchfork in your hand, Roger.
That's right. It's a scythe and a hammer. Anyway, the one thing I wanted to mention of what makes Ferrisburg unique is the parks, the number of park acres that we have, and of course that creates other dilemmas as to how we use our land, and that's where we have to get creative, I think, on some ideas on what land is available out there yet, and Planning Commission is certainly thinking about that, and we want council to think about that too. So there's a lot of discussion that has to go on that. First of all, on the marijuana ordinance, that we talked about that at our Planning Commission meeting. I know the council has voted to prohibit marijuana establishments in the city of Ferrisburg, as many municipalities have. And then we got this request to make it illegal to have it in any zoning district. And I thought, well, what's this all about? This sounds like it's redundant or moot point and whatever. And it finally dawned on me that this is a belt and suspenders approach, in that you voted not to allow any marijuana establishments, and then on another layer is not allowing it in any zoning district. And it finally dawned on me that was to prohibit in the future, if you had a council that wanted to reverse their original decision, would also take a planning commission to change the underlying ordinance in itself and then come back. So I thought, finally, I get it. I get why this attorney is recommending the two ordinances. So we're going to have a public hearing on that in our meeting in January. We moved the meeting to January 10th, by the way, instead of the 3rd, to get away from holidays a little bit. Okay, now that I got that out of the way, number one, term limits, paying $100 a year. I'm totally against term limits for a lot of different reasons, obviously. My tenure, and I've been on the Planning Commission almost 20 years. And I've achieved Master Citizen Planner status through Michigan State University courses I've taken. I go back every year for another day-long courses, and I keep up on everything. And that's been at least 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, we achieved that. Nobody else on the Planning Commission has gone through that program. The county offers a program on zoning and on planning for free, and to my knowledge, not everybody on the Planning Commission has even bothered to do that. So what you have is a lot of people that are interested in getting on there. We do have turnover, and we reduced our Planning Commission from 9 members to 7 a couple of years ago because we had trouble getting people on there. We couldn't reach a quorum. So you have people on there that are well-intentioned and they are interested in everything, but are just not up to date on things. We rely on our planner, obviously, for professional advice in that regard too. But I still think steady hand at the tiller sometimes is a good way to go. Institutional knowledge is not a bad thing, in my opinion. So there are cases where if I was doing something wrong, obviously council should say, you're not going to get reappointed or you're off on there. You're getting too old for this job and you're not handling it right, and you're not good with the public or for whatever reason. but we don't get a lot of applications. We just don't. And there may be cases on the ZBA where you have fewer members and you do have trouble with that. But you also have Kitchell Lindquist, you got recreation, you got openings all the time. You go on the city's website, all the openings that are up there. We get turnover on our commission as well. So we have new people coming in, but they're fresh. You know, they're not familiar with planning and zoning and how the city is run. Never been to a meeting. Never applied for any other board or commission where there is an opening to start with. So from that standpoint, I think you have to be careful on saying 9 years and you're out. I've served on Ottawa County Parks, for example, as 12 years. And I squeezed out a 13th year, which is my next year. But anyway, then I understand that because there's only 5 public people appointed to that whole board for the county. As far as paying somebody, $100 is not going to do it for me. I tell you, of all the dozens of boards and commissions I've served on in my life, the only one that I get paid for, and that is mainly for mileage, is the parks, county parks, because it's 15 miles down to Fillmore and back from my house and everything. That's the only one. So personally, I feel if a citizen wants to serve their city and do it, $100 won't do it. $100 is a nice gesture at the party and say, here's a gift card and thank you for all your hard work. But I don't think that's an incentive at all for any of us that do this. And we don't put in the same time council members do, as for example. I mean, you have a lot of work that people don't see that you have to do before you can get to this meeting. This is only part of it, and I totally understand that. So I have no problem with that. But as far as the rest of it, it's term limits. I think I've been against them. You mentioned the House and the Senate, the state of Michigan, big problems as far as turnover there. So there are cases where somebody should be voted off a commission, should get off, and I think it should be taken on a case-by-case basis. So that is my opinion, obviously. I enjoy serving on the Planning Commission. It's been 20 years, and I'd like to continue. There's only a couple of us. There's a couple of us been on that long, John Rifle, myself. And but the rest of the people, they're newer, they don't show up for the meetings, and so a couple of us old guards keep the ball rolling. And we've had some good issues to deal with in the last couple of years, as you well know too, over the years. So I think it takes a steady hand to tiller sometimes. Thank you.
Reports. City manager report.
No report?
Okay. City council members. Councilmember Carlson.
No report.
Councilmember Twa's not here. Councilmember DeWitt.
I'm leaving for Florida. I may or may not be back for the next meeting.
Okay. Safe travels. Councilmember Kennedy.
From what I understand, the Carols thing was well attended. We had double the people than last time. We had a death in the family, so I couldn't attend at the last minute. End of report.
Mayor Pro Tem O'Donnell.
I'd like to thank Debbie for end of report.
Councilmember Blees.
Yeah, I want to agree with Tim. The holiday party I thought it was well attended and a lot of positive comments from it. So we appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, and so mine attended the Carol Sing. It was well attended. It was one of the largest groups we've had. Also, Mayor Pro Tem O'Donnell has an ability to be able to sing well, so he sang also. So thank you. And at this time, I just want to wish everyone happy and safe holidays and a blessed 2019.
Motion adjourned.
So moved.
Give these babies to DeWitt.
You gotta.
He's not adjourned.
You gotta
quite
stay
yet.
after school.
You're after school.
He's
You
got
gotta
a
do this.
sign about
Hey Tim, do you want to get a hold of Mike? We're not doing the fire barn.
Yeah, I came in.
Do you want to